magazines in America have been evolving since their creation in the 1700s. The purpose of them back then was to get information to people in the colonies routinely because their settlements were decently isolated. Now, they are distributed everywhere and can be accessed from various devices besides the printed paper. Magazines began as general sources of information and have tailored themselves over time to reach many audiences.
Early on, there were more newspapers than magazines, so competition seemed unlikely. With the invention of the printing press, used by Benjamin Franklin, printing more pages became easier, and the idea of regularly putting out a magazine seemed ideal. Magazines were becoming more and more popular in Europe to report the current events on a monthly basis with commentaries and features. Once the printing press was brought over to the United States, magazines and newspapers naturally increased. The idea of having more than just war reports or tax updates drew in readers to magazines over newspapers. Benjamin Franklin began producing the first American magazine, which would have been called General Magazine, but 3 days before he was able to print it, the American magazine was already published by Andrew Bradford. This magazine contained articles about colonial government and current politics. Literacy was limited at this time, so magazines had to appeal to a small group of readers. Bradford's magazine only lasted 3 months because it didn't hold the attention of its restricted audience, but it opened the door for other publications to begin and have more successful circulations.
For magazines to survive, they must be able to evolve along with the world. Competition between publishers and writers has always existed, but the way to gain a loyal audience was to specialize. This concept allowed and still allows magazines to maintain readers. People want to read about things that are interesting to them. Specializing is key to keeping an audience. Topics, themes, or even groups are concentrated on to stay in a magazine. Magazines from 1770, when the first women's magazine was created, and onward, have been focused on their breed of readers. Gender, socioeconomic, class, age, or interests have been common factors to determining what content is published in a magazine. News, fashion, photography, lifestyle, sports, and many other subjects are the basis for the majority of magazines. In the 18 to 1900s, the most popular subjects were women's issues, literature, and political commentary. Readers gravitate to what appeals to them the most and what is relevant to the time. In the 1930s, the most popular magazine was The New Yorker, which covered race, politics, class, and religion. These were all important topics around this time because of the Great Depression and the impending World War. The New Yorker kept its popularity during World War II by keeping people interested in the world around them and by giving them a civilian perspective. The magazine covers reflect both the war and the impact of the conflict on American culture. Female empowerment was especially emphasized in this time because so many men were fighting the war and women were left to keep the country going. The magazine contained advertisements that were regionally distributed and made the cost of publishing magazines less expensive. The magazine and advertisements were aimed for those that could afford luxury and everyday items. Henry Luce was commonly known as the most influential private citizen in America of his day, and launched and supervised magazines while transforming journalism and reading habits of upscale Americans. Luce was a major contributor to the creation of Life, Sports Illustrated, Fortune, and March of Time. Magazines were taken to the next level and moved with the times thanks to Luce.
Magazines have been able to stay with the times more easily than many other forms of media. Their accessibility is a large factor to this. Magazines are filled with articles that are less time-consuming to read than, say, a book. Photos are often incorporated and attracted attention. Now, they still have this instant entertainment quality, but they are even more adapted to our digital culture. A reader can access a magazine in various mediums, apps, websites, blogs, and the hard copy itself. As the use of technology increases, the demand for print decreases, which may just mean the price of magazines will drop, but doesn't mean that more consumers will consume them. More people today are interested in e-readers and various products that aid in reading. When it comes to grabbing the audience's attention and competing with other firms, advertisements and staying specialized are musts. When it comes down to competition between firms, the keywords are media, advertising, and a competitive strategy. Media and advertising are what attract your audience and consumers. Every magazine has its own strategy to attracting attention and drawing them in to read that certain magazine or intriguing them with an article featured on the cover. Competitors in popular themes like fashion or entertainment news have to fight to maintain readers with a competitive strategy. being supported by popular figures on a cover, or containing a noteworthy article that raises questions are common ways to one-up a competing publication.
Magazines have been able to thrive and survive through generations of advancement. Society and technology have forced publications to move with the times or consider themselves done. In the beginning, Ben Franklin realized how quickly competition would grow as audiences grew. Literacy and interest had to be targeted to gain success. Later, people changed. They were no longer revolutionaries. They were Americans living out their daily lives and interested in the world around them. War, politics, fashion, and sports were the most interesting topics to write about and read. Now Americans still have this intrigue, but magazines have to hold their attention and make it easy for anyone to access them. Constant entertainment is necessary in the current society. Putting the magazine at their door, on their phone, computer, or even Kindle makes it simple for anyone to get everything in the magazine. All of the advertisements, photos, and articles are available on almost any device that are derived from the printed magazine.
Currently, magazines aren't at their all-time high, but are surviving because of their adaptability and loyal subscribers. In future years, we do not see magazine printing to be very popular. Having everything at your fingertips through the technology everyone seems to own makes printed copies of these publications obsolete. Aside from just being one of the only pieces of mail being delivered to your house, the amount of paper wasted on their glossy pages will be reduced over time. Soon, magazines in salons and waiting rooms will be replaced with Kindles and iPads loaded with apps and web versions of any magazine a reader could want.